Alright, hello everybody. Welcome to the channel. We're going to be going into a Bosch VE pump off of a 5.9 Cummins setup. This is out of we'll span it around here. It's out of an older Dodge pickup. I didn't film pulling the pump off of the engine, but I figure, I'm going to film putting it back on after I get it built, so you'll pretty much get the same gist of it. Things have been kind of hectic around here lately. I've got a lot going on at the farm that I'm trying to get, trying to film as well. Plus we've had a lot of crazy weather. We had, a week of ice and then a week of rain. We've gotten, I think, almost 6 inches of rain in the last week, so things are kind of messed up. I've got one of my brand new creek crossing that we just had put in, new culvert, new gravel, the whole 9 yards. It's washed out, so we're going to be doing a video up there because I'll have to fix that. So it's been a crazy week, but we're going to try and see if we can't get this pump knocked out real quick. So y'all grab you some popcorn and sit back, and we'll go into this. We'll go into tearing one of these down and putting them back together. These are a whole lot more complicated than your CVs and your Ford tractor pumps and stuff like that. Those are simple. These Bosch, of course, being German engineering, they're pretty complicated, and they're very picky. Things have to be exact or they don't work right. So we're gonna get started and go into that, and I'll kind of try and show you some of the specifics, things that have to be done, and we'll go from there. So just hang tight. The key thing on these pumps, and y'all bear with me, I'm playing with this new camera, so I got to figure out my angles. When you go to pull your throttle shaft off on these VEs, you want to get this top section separated and get it off first, because you need to mark your shaft. So you get that one off, and then we're gonna get your O-ring and everything off, or your washers. And then what you want to do is on your shaft here, it's splined, and you've got a straight line right here. So what I always do is take a center punch and punch a dot right in line with that line, so you know where your shaft is at. Because if you don't, this thing will go on anywhere, and it'll have everything out of whack. So if you take and put you a mark there, that kind of sets everything up, so you know when we go back together where to put it. Otherwise you have to sit there and keep walking it until you get it where you're getting the same travel both ways for your idle as well as for your full throttle. Okay, I've already got these two bolts out. Now the back two, generally you'll have to go in and pull your set screws, your fast idle and your low idle. You have to get them out of your way because they block being able to get to the screw. So it's kind of a pain, but it's just, you have to do it because you can't get to those two Allen bolts to get the top cover off. So get those pulled real quick. It's not real quick because they're a pain to get out, because they're always rusted up in between the two places that they screw in. A lot of times you can get them kind of some of the way out and be able to get an Allen wrench in to these bolts to get these two out of your way. They're generally a pain no matter how you go about it, and you always end up dropping stuff and having to go chase it. Y'all just kind of bear with me because I'm, like I say, I'm playing with this new GoPro because I thought, you know, maybe that it might allow me to give you a little bit better view than using, you know, just the still camera in one place. So we're going to try it out on this video and see how it does. But we get these out, and then we can get our top cover. But you can see how your bolt is right in line with your set screw, so it prevents you from being able to get a Allen wrench in them. So you have to take them loose and get them out of your way to get the darn thing out of there. I'm trying to keep my arms and everything where it keeps y'all with the best light to see, because I'm not sure how well this thing does, but hopefully it records out and, you know, and makes a fairly decent video. So we'll just have to record it and watch it and then see what it looks like. Like I didn't record actually pulling this pump off of the truck, but I'm going to record reinstalling it once I get it built, and it'll give you pretty much the same info as to what has to be done to get them on and off. Like I say, this one had never been off of the truck before, so I didn't record taking it off in case I had some language that didn't need to be on video, trying to get some of the bolts and different things out since it had never been pulled off before. But I'll video reinstalling it, that way y'all will be able to see the steps that are involved in, you know, in getting them off of these old 12 valve Cummins. And it's pretty much the same procedure even on the newer 24 valves with the mechanical pump. So we'll go through it all, and hopefully that'll give you some info on how to go about doing it. You know, this particular version, with it being the old school 12 valve, you know, an older setup, it has the LDA diaphragm on it, which was kind of acted like a puff limiter, like on the big trucks run, you know, for when you shift gears. Now, the next thing you've got to pull out is your fuel screw, because it's locked in to the governor arm. So you need to get it out so that it frees the top cover up to be able to come off. So we'll get it out and out of our way. And then when you get ready to pull the top cover, you want to take and push your throttle down so that it stays with the pump. And there you have it. Now you've got, you know, your top cover off. And this opens up the access to the pump. Alright, so our next step that we'll do is disconnect, and I think we just dropped the washer. Yeah. Off of, this is a shim that goes on the throttle. And that's also a good trick. Y'all kind of seen it there. Rule of thumb that I was taught, and I still use, is anytime you're building a pump, before you start, empty your trash can. So that way, in case anything that does fall, it makes it easier to find. Alright, now, next thing we'll do is get the governor weight assembly and all out. You'll take your Allen wrench, and normally you're going to have to break that loose. This case, I think I'm going to put a socket on it because it'll make it a little easier to get it loose, and then we'll screw it out. You take a 14 millimeter socket and you can get on there and break it loose. Then you can put your Allen wrench on and screw it right out. Now I take my fingers and get in here and hold against the governor weights, so that way when this shaft comes out, your weights don't all fall out down into the pump cavity. What this does is sets your cut in, cut out, your high idle. So then you'll slide your governor weights out. And then you've got two spacers here. One is just like a regular O-ring, and then the other one is a tapered, and it always goes against the pump body. So you lay all that down. Then for your assembly here, you have to have a special socket, and that's this here, because it's a three-way bolt, so you have to have it. But before we pull that, we're going to take it and turn it up and get the hydraulic head out. And these pumps are very, very picky. I mean, everything has to be, you know, exactly where it come out when you go to put it back together, or you're in trouble. So everything, when I build it, everything is put back in at the 12 o'clock position. You know, and I'll turn, you know, as I'm doing, I'll turn everything to the 12 o'clock position. Your keyway on your pump shaft, your timing mark on your cam plate, as well as on your rotor and your head. Everything will go back into that 12 o'clock position, so that way when you go back together, everything's in time. Because it's very easy to have one in the 6 and the other's in the 12, and you think you're good, but when you go to try and crank it up, it'll just turn over but won't ever start. So these two bolts I had already pulled loose when I was in the process of pulling the pump, but we'll go ahead and get them out of our way. On these head bolts, it's the easiest way to do it is take your Torx bit and just kind of tap on them a little bit. And that, you know, to get them to break loose, because they are usually super tight. So I'll usually just take a punch and hit them a couple times with that punch. But it, you know, kind of works just as well if you drive your socket in. And I'm afraid these are going to be where I'm going to have to do them with the, going to have to hit them with a punch to get them jarred loose, because they're not wanting to give up. I've broke several Torx bits over the years trying to get these things out of different pumps. We may have to try it back up and go to a, I think the one, yeah, this one right here is the one that fits it, and as you can see, it's been broke off a couple times trying to get them out. So we'll see if we can get lucky enough to get them out again. There's one. wanting to turn with us. Well, let's try the next one. And sometimes you have to whack on them pretty good to get all the rust and the years of hot cold with a steel bolt in an aluminum housing has a tendency to seize them up. That's why generally, you know, hitting on them will generally jar them loose. I've never broke one yet, but I've had a few that I thought were going to. All right, we're in business now. We got them all broke loose. Once they break loose, they'll screw right out with your fingers, but they just, you can see where they seize up in that housing. Y'all have to bear with me because I'm gonna be stopping this GoPro every now and then just to kind of make sure that we're still filming right, because like I say, this is my first round giving it a shot to see how it's going to work. So hopefully it works good, because I want to be able to use it for some videos at the farm and all. Okay, down to our last bolt. So when you start pulling this up, you're going to see why I've told many people that have called me up wanting to know if they could change this head O-ring, because that's normally where these pumps go to leaking first. And you know, I've had several people that have wanted to change this head O-ring with the pump still on the tractor or whatever, and yeah, you know, it'll come up, but it doesn't come up high enough to get to the O-ring. And when you pull this thing, if it accidentally comes out, you have a lot of parts that'll fall out. Like this one's got a broke spring. That's a common problem. Which is amazing to me, because the truck actually run good. Normally, if they with a broke spring, they don't run, you know, it causes issues and they don't run right. Alright, of course, this is your rotor assembly, and as you can see, it has a timing notch here that has to line up with your cam ring. You've also got a very important little component right here that you do not want to lose. This is your timing button, and it sets the lift port closure on this pump. If you lose this button, or if you have the wrong size in it, you know, then it doesn't open and close at the proper times for injecting the fuel. And now we'll take this special little tool that fits onto these and screw these little bolts out. These little studs is what I call them, but they're a three-sided setup, and without having that special socket, you pretty much can't get these things out. I have done it with, and have seen it done, people using a punch or a chisel to try and break them loose, and you can normally get them loose, but the problem is you generally can't get them back tight enough, and they'll end up working their way out, or they'll leak. So this on the Bosch pumps, they are pretty much one that you have to have the special tools to do them, or you're going to cause more trouble than you've solved. Alright, now I'm going to unlock. I had the shaft locked in place, which I don't know, on the Cummins pumps, on the VEs, you have this little shaft
this little bolt right here that has a, find it over here on my table. It has this little plate that is in it from the, to start off. You've got it'll set in like this, and it bolts back in. You tighten it down, and then the shaft will turn like it's supposed to. But like when you're wanting to pull it off, you bring it up to number 1. You pull this out and lock this down. And that'll prevent the pump from being able to turn. So when you pull it, everything stays in place. So we're going to take that out, and then we're going to take and turn this keyway to the 12 o'clock position, because that's where we're going to pull everything. And as you can see, that puts, let me put my light down in here so you can see, that puts the little timing pin on the cam plate at the 12 o'clock position. So you'll take and pull it out, and then that exposes your cam rollers. And of course, you want to look at your plate, at your lobes, and make sure that they're not wore down, or that you're starting to see the chrome crack. Because if that chrome's starting to crack, then it's starting to come apart, and you're going to need to replace it. Okay, I'll have to do this kind of one-handed, I guess, so I can keep my light where you can see. You're going to pull your little adapter out. Then what we have to do is pull this little spring pin out, and then this little pin here, get it out. And then what we're going to have to do, we'll turn our shaft to the side enough to slide this pin out of the advance, and then you can pull your rollers out. And when you get your rollers out, then you go ahead and take and kind of look at them, check them, make sure you don't have a lot of slack, a lot of wear between the roller and the bushing, or wear on the pin itself. And then of course you also look at your roller, to make sure that it's not starting to break down or anything. I mean, these look good, so I think we'll be okay. Okay, next step we're going to do is pull the drive shaft itself up out, and it has a key, and it has a washer that, of course, the key will fall out, so you just get it picked up out of the hole, set it back with your drive shaft, and then get your spacer out. Now, down up under this plate is your transfer pump. It's what makes your pressure, what brings your low pressure in and turns it into high pressure for the pump. So we've got to pull these 2 screws out and then pull that plate. When you get ready to do these screws, take your Torx bit and same thing, just kind of tap on it a little bit, and they'll generally break loose and come right on out. And that's one. And we'll see if we can get the other one here. May have to do something different to give y'all a little bit better light to see. We'll get on that one. And we're going to do the same thing, just tap on it a couple times and get it broke loose. Get it pulled out. We might, I'm just trying to kind of see if I could figure out a way to give y'all a little bit better light. You're going to get this plate out next, and it's important that you pay attention on the positioning, because like I say, everything on these deadgum pumps is critical. It's got to be back exactly like it come out. The way it's turned with your other hole toward the front, that's the same way that you're going to put it back in. And as you can see, that's the same way that your liner is in place. So you want to make sure, you know, and pay attention and lay everything out exactly how it comes out. Now the next thing we're going to do is get the transfer pump, the blade holder. We're going to set it out, and then we'll set each blade back corresponding to the slot that it was in the holder. Then these liners, sometimes they'll come right out for you. Sometimes they're a pain in the butt. So you just kind of have to get two hands down in there and work it up out of there. And you can flip this thing the wrong way and put it back in, and it will not pump. So it's very important that you take it out and set it back down exactly how it goes back in the pump body, because like I say, it'll pump, you know, it'll all go together, but it'll never crank. Okay, last thing we're going to do, which I'm going to turn it back on its side for just a second so we can get this regulator out. This right here is what controls your fuel pressure. It's a regulator piston, and what we're going to do, we'll get it broke loose. And get it pulled out so that we can get the line off, and we'll get the advance out, and then the pump itself will be tore down. And generally this is going to want to come out with the line with it, so it's best to just go ahead and unhook it over here and get a 5/16. If you'll just go ahead and unhook that line and pull it all out together, that way you can just lay it over to the side, and you know, you don't have to worry about separating it or anything. Get your line loose, and then screw your regulator on out, and then see it all comes out as a one-piece deal. But it has a little piston in there, and this stop right here is what sets the pressure. And what I usually will do is take a punch and just kind of push and make sure that, you know, that it's free. It's going to be tight, but you want to make sure that it's free. So what we'll do now is set it back up, and we'll get the advance pulled out of it. And you'll take the same setup, take your Allen or Torx and get these broke loose. And this is another thing. Let me shut this compressor off for right now, because we don't need it. But this is another thing that you need to pay attention to, is make sure that you lay all this exactly how it comes out, so you don't get your advance turned around backwards or anything like that, because they will run, but they won't run right. So go ahead and get all of these broke loose. What is it, Miss Daisy? Miss Daisy's not real happy about being out here. She likes to be able to run around out and play, but it's a rainy day and we just gave her a bath, so she's having to stay in the shop with me because I don't want her out getting all nasty. And this last one's wanting to be a pain about breaking loose. It's wanting to be a butthole, so we may have to do it a little different. Man, yeah, they put that one in there. Thing in where I can get a little bit better bite on everything. You don't run into them that often, but sometimes they get a little bit too tight for their own good. Okay, now set it back up here and get some of this stuff out of the way. Some of these things put back together where they go. We get it all apart. I'm going to kind of go through each component and show you the things that we're looking for as far as wear issues, or of course like this one was pretty obvious, with the broke with the broke plunger spring. Like I say, usually if it has one like that, they don't even run right. And this truck run good, cranked good. It was just leaking. So that's kind of unusual for them, because like I say, usually if you've got one broke, they don't want to crank good, things of that nature. But the only thing, this one, I mean, I drove the truck and it run good and everything else. It just had a leak. So you'll have your shim, and you're going to have a spring, and then some other shims. So you want to take and lay them on the side that they come out so that everything stays together. And same thing with your other side. Take your screws out, take your plate, and then lay it where it goes, and then you can pull your advance piston out. And of course you've got this little piece here that your pin in the cage goes through, and that's what controls the advance on it. And we got the shims out already, so then you'll take and just lay your piston down like it goes. And of course you got your O-ring seals. You can take them and just lay them there just so you know where they are. The only other thing left you got to do is pop your drive shaft seal out of it, and then it's ready to clean up and start going back together. Of course, we'll check everything over. I'll have to get another spring for that. Usually these things, if you can get under them, they'll usually pop out pretty easy, but sometimes you have to get a little stupid with them. Let me get my big screwdriver. She finally decided to come eat her breakfast, so maybe that'll appease her for a little while. Okay, let's see if we can get this popped out. And they have different, your kits, your pumps, they have a 17 millimeter and then I think a 20 millimeter. They have two different drive shaft sizes, so you kind of have to look when you're doing it to make sure that you get the right seal. And that's basically the gist of tearing one of these little suckers down. As you can see, you got a lot of parts that come out of them. So what we'll do now is we'll go through the cleanup process, cleaning everything up and getting it all ready to go back together. You have these little damper rings that go in your shaft. These little rubber, kind of like shock absorber type. They go in and lock all that together. So that's what we're going to do now. Is we'll go into the cleanup and go from there. Alright, y'all, we're going to get going on the cleanup process here. The first thing we're going to do is pull all the delivery valve holders, which is your nut, and we're going to pull the delivery valves out of the head. And these little copper washers, call them hat gaskets, they're known for, they'll get a crack in them, and if they get a crack, you lose pressure and it'll cause a miss, and it'll cause several other issues. So we're gonna get all of them pulled out, and then we'll polish the nuts and polish the delivery valves and put new washers in. And these, you notice, you've got A, B, C, D, E, F stamped on the head. You want to make sure and keep these things in order, because everything needs to stay together, and they need to go back in the same holes that they come out of. So just take them out one at a time and lay them all out so that you keep them all separated and together with where they go. This is where we used to, when I worked at the fuel shop years and years ago, we used to use school lunch trays, because they had 6 compartments, and we did a lot of the big AMBAC pumps and the big P7100s on the Mack trucks. So they were 6-cylinder inline pumps, and those lunch trays were ideal, because you could just take everything out, put each cylinder in each compartment, and it kept all 6 cylinders apart, separated. But these little rotary pumps, it's not that big a deal. I do have some trays that I use, but mainly I just lay them out on this table. That's why I put this tile on my workbench, because it keeps it, it's not there to be pretty, it's there because it's a softer surface. So if you drop something, it's not near as apt to nick what you're working on. But okay, so we've got them all out, laid out here, and what we're going to do is, first thing you want to do is look at your delivery valves. Make sure you don't have a lot of pitting or anything on the sealing surface. Make sure that they're good and smooth. And then you look here, you can kind of see a line where your hat washer's been setting. We'll take and polish all this out so that it'll be a smooth surface again for when we go back together. So what we do is, like, you just take your nut and your delivery valve for your first cylinder, and then we're going to come over here to the parts washer. I'm going to try and keep this so you can see as I do. You take your nut, and I'm using a microfine sandpaper. This is 1000 grit, and you just take it and do little figure eights. And this laps your nut in, and it'll take out any gall, any high-low spots. Like you can see on here. We'll take your delivery valve and just do a few figure eights and then spin it. Do a few more, spin it, and that polishes it out and gives you a clean surface, a good, smooth, clean surface. They make a lapping block for this, but it's pretty expensive, and I just don't do enough to justify spending the money on one. And that microfine sandpaper does just as good a job. And we'll just do the same thing with all of these. You just go along and polish them in so that everything's in good shape. And of course, on any of these, doesn't matter what pump it is, whether it's a CAV off an old Ford or, no matter what, cleanliness is your biggest thing. You've got to make sure that everything is good and clean and flushed out, which we're getting about time to have to change this. I use diesel fuel in my parts washer. A lot of people use Varsol, naphtha, but I use diesel fuel. It works just as well, costs about the same. But usually about every 4 or 5 pumps, I'll change it and put new in, just so that we keep everything clean. A lot of this, it gets real monotonous on doing these pumps, just because you're doing the same thing over and over and over. Your cleanup really is the longest part of taking one apart or building it. You'll spend more time, if you do it right, you'll spend more time on your cleanup, and prep, getting everything ready to go back together, than you will anything else. So, and it's something that you don't want to cut corners on. You want to make sure it's done right so that you don't have any issues. So just take your time, flush everything good. And I usually go back and I'll flush everything and get it all laid out on the table, and then I'll go back and flush it again as I'm assembling, just to make sure that nothing got in anywhere, because a little speck of dirt goes a long way in these pumps. Doesn't take very much contamination at all to mess the world up. Now we're going to pull the head out and take it and flush it out good. Just make sure everything's good and clean. And then we'll stick it back in the vise, same place, same position we had it with. Like I say, it's kind of hard to see, but it's got their stamped A, B, like I say, the A, B, C, D, E, F, or they may be 1, 2, 3, 4, however, but it'll be, have marks on it to give you your positioning, so you know where you have a reference point. Alright, so now what we're going to do is take these nuts, and I always take them over here to the wire wheel and just buff them off, just kind of clean the crap off of them. They don't have to be perfect. Normally I'll take these pumps and cap them off and put them in my bee blasting machine and blast them before we start. That way it gets rid of anything that's on them. With this one, just to save a little time, I didn't blast, but just to kind of, you get the same results. I mean, take your wire wheel, you can do the same thing. It'll clean them up good. This is exterior, just kind of superficial, doesn't really matter. But I was always taught, if you were gonna, work on something, make it look as good as it's gonna run. So that golden color that you're seeing that's a varnish from older fuel, just age, time running, with diesel fuel. It'll turn kind of that golden, we call it's a gall, but it's just, it'll turn kind of that golden color. And you can just take and knock it off, it'll come off. It's, sometimes you get into stuff that's pretty funky, and that's where I'll have to go ahead and blast it, just because there's no other way to get all the crap off. So we're probably going to be breaking this video into a 2-part setup, because it is a long process. It usually runs into 2 to 3 hours doing one of these VE pumps. So I'll probably break it into a tear down and clean up, and then do the next video, reassembly and reinstall on the truck, and then go through showing you how to get everything bled out and crank back up. So like I say, we'll probably We'll probably break it into a 2-part just to kind of make it where it's not so long. Okay, so we've got those. I've already changed all my O-rings on everything, and I've put the new damper pads in the drive shaft. Another thing you want to look at is where your shaft seal rides. See if if you got bad grooves where that shaft seal rides, because if you do, if they're too bad, you'll have to replace the shaft to prevent it from leaking. But usually these will last a pretty good while. I mean, if you are having problems with one getting fuel into the crankcase, that's where you really want to look good and make sure that you don't have an issue. This is your weight cage assembly. We're just going to kind of look. This is your governor. This is what speeds it up, slows it down. You want to look for wear on your heel and wear here on your shoes, just to make sure that you don't have a lot of wear issues. And then of course we'll do the same thing with your weights, is just clean them up, make sure that we don't have anything on them. And like I say, this is a drawn out, takes a while process. Just flush everything good. And then you get ready to put it back together. Let me make sure that I've got my camera where y'all can see. You'll take and just put all of your weights back down in. And then you can take your washer and see it's going to set on the top part of the shoe. When you put it all back together, you want to make sure that all your weights are the same height, so make sure one's not kicked, because if it is, then that lets you know that washer's on the wrong side. Okay, so what we're going to do now is go ahead and get started putting this thing back together. And first thing we're going to do, we'll go ahead and put this drive shaft seal in real quick, and then we're going to get the head put back together. But here's your new seal. And like I say, they have there's a 17 millimeter and a 20 millimeter drive shaft that are used in these pumps, so you have to pay attention as to which seal that you have. Of course, just take it and get it started in, and just knock it all the way down where it's flush with the housing. And once you're there, then you're good. So that's ready to start putting everything back in. But what we're going to do real quick is go ahead and put the head back together. And of course, in the kit, you'll get 6 new copper washers, and you'll just take them and drop one in each hole, and you want to make sure that they lay down flat in the hole. You can take a pick or whatever and just get them in position so that they're laying down flat down in there where they go. And once you have them in and all set, then you'll come back over here and take, starting with A, drop your delivery valve in and just go all the way around. Set all your valves back in. And then take your spring, set it on, set your nut on. I just screw them down finger tight to begin with until I get them all in, and then we'll tighten them down. And like I say, it's a tedious process, but if you take your time and just run through them, I mean, these things aren't complicated to build, but I mean, there is a, same with anything, I mean, there is a procedure that you have to go through. There's a way they have to come apart and a way they go back together. Okay, and there is a torque setting for these delivery valve nuts that I've learned that just over the years, about like that is plenty. I mean, that comes out about where they would torque. It's in the inch pounds, so it's not a massive amount that they torque to. We'll set our old gaskets over there out of the way. Okay, so now what we're going to do is set the pump housing back up here, and we're going to set it in so that if you're looking from the drive in, your 12 o'clock position will be right here. Everything that you do as far as timing this pump or anything, everything is from the drive in, which is, this would be your drive in. So everything that you look at, if it says 12 o'clock, from the drive in, or if it says 6 degrees or whatever, you got to think about looking at it from this end, not this end. So we're going to set it in just like this, and then we're going to take our liner and just I usually just take a piece of this microfine and just kind of polish it a little bit just to make sure there's no nicks or grooves. And then you're going to take and put it back in the same way it came out. And you just kind of have to play with it a little bit to get it to lay down where it goes. And then line your screw holes back up. Once you get that, then what we're going to do is take our blade set. And sometimes you can get lucky, and I'm thinking that this one's going to be nice to me, and get them all back in there together. A lot of times you have to sit there and put each individual one back in, but like I say, this time it cooperated with me and they all stayed in the holder. So then we'll take our plate and put it back on. Like I say, you got to be careful to not get these things turned opposite from where they're supposed to be. Of course, this is, you'll only go back in one way, but that liner is very easy to accidentally flip it. And then when you get ready to go in, you end up putting it in upside down, to where it's running clockwise instead of counterclockwise. And you won't ever get this thing started. So, very important to pay attention on your positioning. You get your 2 screws back in, and you want to get both of them started before you tighten either one down. And before you tighten them down, you want to look down in here and kind of get your liner where, let me get my light here so y'all can see a little better. You want to get your liner where it is centered in there before you tighten them down. And then you can go ahead and tighten your screws down. And then you just kind of want to take your hand and make sure that liner will still move around free. Okay, then the next thing you're going to do is take your drive shaft, and this is where it comes in that you got to start using a little grease to kind of help you out. Take and put you a little grease on it and lock it in, and then put you a little grease in your keyway to kind of help hold this key in that turns your transfer pump. And then you're going to ease it down in and try and get it lined back up so that your key goes back into the blades. And once you do, then you'll be able to spin it free. And of course, that, like I said, that's turning your blades as well as the shaft. Okay, now what we're going to do is we'll put this thing, you're going to put your drive shaft back at the 6 o'clock position so that your tangs, the tabs on your shaft, I'm trying to get where you can see, are turned crossways. When it's in the 12 o'clock position with the keyway to the 12 o'clock, your tangs will be like, they'll be straight up and down, but you need them sideways so that you'll be able to put your rollers, your roller cage and all back in. So that's where we're at here. This is your rollers, and like I say, you want to look them over good and make sure that you don't have any wear, or starting to see the chrome peeling off or anything like that. These are still in good shape, so we're going to take and lower it back down in and get it set right back down in there where it goes. And then we'll take our advance piston, and usually if you'll take and put you a little grease, that'll kind of help keep that tab picked up and in place where it goes. And you want to make sure that your advance is good and free. And then you'll take and slide this pin and get it slid back in so that it's locked in to the advance piston. Then take you a straight pin and line that pinhole up with where it goes. Then take your pin, your locator pin, and you're going to put it back in the hole and push it all the way down. Then you'll take this little tab here that locks them in, that holds that pin in, and get it back down in there and locked in, and then that's got your advance piston back locked in with your roller plate, and that's what controls advancing or retarding your pump timing based on the load that's being put on the engine at the time. Okay, so the next thing we'll do is go ahead and get our plates, our advanced end plates. You put your O-ring in, and then just take and put you a little grease around it, just to, it helps hold it in there, as well as keeps it from trying to tear, you know, as you're screwing pieces in or as you're tightening this down. Now on here, you just want to get these started. You don't want to tighten them down, because you're going to need to be able to push that advance all the way that way to get your springs and everything back in. Of course, you're going to have your spring. You got a timing shim that'll go in. You get that put in, and then take your O-ring. And like I say, it doesn't have to be a bunch of grease. You just want a little bit on it to help it kind of stay moist and keeps it, like I say, from trying to tear or anything. And you're going to take your other shim, and it goes in there. We're going to take and clean this thing off a little bit. Get some of the stuff off of it that you can't get to when it's all assembled. Just flush everything out good. Okay, then this will go back on just like so. You get it put back on and get your bolts back in. And like I say, the reason that you don't want to tighten that other side up until you get these on is if you did, it would be like that. You'd be having to try and push it in at the same time that you're trying to get your screws started. So if you leave that other side loose until you get all four of them started, then it makes it a little easier to get everything back together. And then we'll come over here and tighten this side up. You want to kind of tighten them up even, tighten one a little and then the next, so that way it pulls it in even. And then that's all there is to your advance end. Now we start getting a little bit trickier now as we get to the point of starting to put the cam ring and the head and everything back in. But you're going to take and put your plate in, get it in there, then your cam ring. It's right now it'll be set with the, we can go ahead and do it. We'll go ahead and turn the shaft back, put the keyway back at 12, so that way it puts this is your timing pin, and it's going to have it going in at the 12 o'clock position. So as you can see, you know, that puts it back at the 12 o'clock position, which is where you want everything as you're assembling. So then we're going to take our head, our rotor assembly, and go over here and just kind of rinse it, and just a real light polish. You don't want to get crazy with it. Just a light brushing so you get any glaze that's on it, and make sure everything moves good and free. Then set it right here, and what we're going to do now is take and just kind of dry the bottom right here, because this little recess right here is where your timing button's going to go. And like I say, this little button is very critical. It sets your lift to port on the pump, and if you get the wrong one or you lose yours, and then you got to try and put it back together without one in it, or try and put a different size in, it's going to throw your timing off, and then you have to get on the test stand with a dial indicator and go through and set lift to port and figure out what shim size that you need to put back in. So what you're going to do now is you'll line this little notch here up with the notch in the cam ring, and that puts everything back at the, puts everything at your 12 o'clock position. And then you're also, this little hole right here, you want it lined up with your mark so that everything is toward the front. And that's got you everything set back at the 12 o'clock position. And then you'll take your fulcrum lever here, and this little ball is going to go back into that hole. So you'll get it all set back in where it goes, and then bring everything around where it goes and line that up. And then you'll take your guide studs, and they're going to go, they have a hole in the side of the lever that they go into. So you have to squat down here to where you can see them to get them started in where they go. Run both of them in. You don't want to tighten these down yet. You just want to get them started in and into the holes, the lineup that they go into. And like I say, sometimes it can be a pain in the butt. They'll mess with you, and you just kind of have to jiggle everything around until you get them back in where they go. And it's okay if it comes out because of the head of the rotor, because you can get it back in, because it'll fall out with you several times over the course of getting this together. And then I'll usually take and the head off good, because next what you're going to do is take your springs, put your little grease on them, stick it in the hole. This is strictly just to help hold everything together during the assembly process. I mean, it doesn't really serve any other purpose other than that. But it will save you a lot of headache when you go trying to put this thing together, because this part here can be a little tricky trying to get everything where it goes. Go ahead and use some of that grease and do around your head O-ring. Okay, and then what you'll do, if you notice, these are kind of offset, so you kind of want to line up on your plate there the same way, and then you'll take and set your springs down on the ears where they go, and kind of turn it on that same angle. Now, before you try and put this rotor back into your head, if you'll take and spray you a little bit of penetrating oil, it can be WD-40, whatever. You're just wanting to make it slick. And I'm going to try and do this to where y'all can kind of see as we're going here. You just kind of have to get everything lined up and just rock that head a little bit. It will help you. And then everything's set down. Now you want to make sure that you stayed in everything, and I'll show it to you a little better. It's hard for me to show you some stuff and me be able to see what I'm looking for at the same time, so we'll show you as we go here. And then we're going to take our head bolts and get them started back in. And this is where you kind of have to remember, because on this plate you've got one that goes through this plate, so you have to pay attention. You got this one that's going to be a little bit longer, so you'll get, if you get these three started and use them to go ahead and get your head pulled down, then you can put your other one in. And this here, same thing here, you want to bring them down a little at a time. So that it pulls that head in and pulls it in even, so you don't cut your head O-ring or anything like that. And on this head, I generally, once I get it down and all of them tied, I'll go back with a socket and my Torx bit and tighten them on down. Same thing with on your Advance. You can go ahead and give them a little bit of extra pull, so you know they're tight. And a good rule of thumb that I use when I'm building these is, as I get things built and I get done with a particular wrench, before it get, I go through whatever it fits, I put on and make sure it's tight before I hang it back on the board, so that way I know that everything that I needed that wrench for has been tightened, and and we know we're good. Okay, so now we can go ahead and put the little tool on and tighten these up, tighten your Advance studs. You don't want to get stupid with these, because you are dealing with aluminum threads, and it's very easy to accidentally pull the threads out. Alright, so now you can go ahead and put this plate back on, and then you can use it to help hold the pump while you're putting your top cover and everything else back on. So go ahead and get all 3 of these started. I guess I could have done it with the T-handle, just force a habit, you know, but this does make it go a little quicker, makes it a little easier. Lock them 2 down, and then same thing with your 4th head bolt. Go ahead and run it down. Okay, we've got all that tight. So now what we're going to do is take and turn this pump over, and we'll take the bracket, you know, use that bracket, and that kind of helps hold it. Alright, so now what you want to do, you always want to look in and make sure that you're still in that control sleeve good. Now, I know it's hard to see down in there, but you know, if you look down in, you'll be able to see, you know, that all the components are moving like they need to. Okay, so now what we're going to do is take our guide arm here, and we'll get a little grease on the sleeve and just start it up in the hole. And you're going to take your 2 washers, and I always just put a little grease on them just to kind of help hold them against the housing. You slide your washer through them so that it helps to hold them. Then you'll take your weights and just stick them down in, and you want to hold against your weights and get it splined up, get it started going in. And you can do it that way, just hold against with your fulcrum lever to where it holds everything in good, and then just get your stud started. And screw it back up in place. And what this screw right here will set your RPMs as far as your cutout RPMs. So you want to make sure, I mean, I kind of mark it where it's at when I pull it, so I know I get back in the pretty close to the same place, and lock it down good. And then you want to make sure that everything moves free, make sure that your weights will move and all that, so you know you're good there. And then we'll take a little piece of trash there that was down in the transfer pump hole. You want to make sure all that stuff's out. And then take your regulator, put you a little grease on everything so that it all slides in good, and get it started back in the hole. You can go ahead and run it on down. And take your 10mm, and you can run it on down tight, and then we'll get started back in right here. Let me grab a 8mm real quick for that. And we'll get this started back in. And you just want to make sure, you know, just like I say, just make sure that it starts good and doesn't try and cross with you or anything. Okay, and that's got that. So now the next part is we'll take and put us a little grease on the throttle shaft and just hold those springs back, stick it back in, hook it back in, and it's going to turn just like that. So we'll take our top cover and get it started up in the hole. And the dadgum head O-ring fell out, or the head O-ring, the top cover gasket. And we'll take and get everything turned back like it goes. And just set your top cover back down. And then take and put your 4 bolts back in. And generally what I'll do is just a light tap, and it'll tap back in place when you go to set it down. This darn O-ring's wanting to keep coming out, so we're going to fix that real quick. Get it back in there and put us a little grease on to kind of help keep it from wanting to fall out so easy. Okay, same thing. We're just going to take and get our throttle shaft started up in. And get your top cover sitting down on. You'll kind of have to push it forward just a little bit so that it'll lock down in place. Because you have one dowel pin in the top cover that has to line up with a pin, line up with the hole in the housing. You get these all started back in, and a set of ball Allen wrenches come in real handy in this aspect, making it easier to get to those inside ones on these setups that have the LDA, the puff limiter, up on the top. But you can get it with the regular Allen wrench. It'll just it'll help you get them run down. You can't tighten it with them, but it'll help you get them run on down. But the Allen wrenches that have a little ball on the end to where you can work on an angle and stuff are ideal for this type setup. And then we'll just take and tighten your top cover down. Get it all locked down, and then the next step will be putting we'll put the fuel screw back in real quick, and then we'll get our throttle lever on. And it'll be ready to put back on the truck. Okay, now we'll take our fuel screw, just put a little grease on there, get it started back up in, and you'll feel this, you'll kind of feel some resistance when it starts hitting up against the linkage in there, but you'll just run it on down tight. Okay, now next step is your throttle, which you're going to take your spring pack and put it in first, get it back in place. You're not going to hook any of your springs up until we know everything is back where we want it. The next thing we're going to do is line up my notch where I had marked this, where it goes. You take and line it up, then you can put your stop screws, go ahead and run them back in where they go. And then we'll do the same thing on this side. Go ahead and run it back in. And take the 10 millimeter and we'll lock them back down